There are moments in life when the noise of the world grows deafening. The whispers behind your back, the false tales spun in jealousy, the rumors that climb walls and seep into places truth was never allowed to speak. You sit quietly, carrying your innocence like a burden while the world paints you guilty. But don't be deceived. Heaven hears what earth misjudges, and when God decides to speak, He does not argue with the lies. He replaces them with miracles so loud they silence every voice raised against you. There's a holy hush that often comes before heaven acts. It's not the silence of defeat, but the stillness of preparation. You may be misunderstood, misrepresented, or even mocked, but never mistake this season of silence as the absence of God. For when God moves, He does not simply adjust the scenery, He flips the whole script. What they call your failure will soon be the evidence of His favor. What they mocked as your downfall will become the very place He establishes His victory. The miracle He is about to drop into your life is not just for you. It is His divine response to the lies spoken over you. The scriptures tell us in Isaiah 54:17, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord." Do you realize the depth of that promise? It means not only will God block the weapons, they won't even work. It means not only will He protect you from harm, He will silence the harm spoken of you. God doesn't just deliver, He defends. He doesn't just answer prayer, He shuts mouths. You don't have to fight back with words. You don't need to explain your heart to people determined to misunderstand you. Let them believe what they will. God's miracle is not just a breakthrough. It is a divine courtroom where truth walks in wearing glory and lies dissolve in shame. Your vindication will not be your explanation. It will be your elevation. When God blesses you in public after you've been torn down in private, that blessing becomes its own defense. Think of Joseph, lied about, imprisoned, forgotten. Yet when the time came, God didn't release him in secret. He lifted him in front of the very world that cast him down. And no one asked Pharaoh for the backstory. They just saw the favor. The same will happen to you. People won't remember what they heard about you. They'll only see what God has done through you. There is a miracle prepared for you that has your name written in heaven's ink. No gossip can erase it. No lie can override it. No betrayal can block it. It is not based on their opinions. It is anchored in God's covenant. What He has promised you is not just restoration, it is revelation. He is about to reveal who you are by showing what He can do. And when that miracle drops, it won't just change your life, it will silence every lie that tried to define you. So if you've been crying in secret because of things said that weren't true, hold on. If you've been hidden in the shadows of slander, stay still. If your name has been dragged through the dust, look up. Heaven is about to make an announcement on your behalf. And God doesn't whisper when He moves in justice, He roars. And now, let us examine the divine truths that prepare the ground for such a miracle. The kind that not only lifts you, but silences the storm of lies against you. There is a divine rhythm to how God moves. He does not rush. He does not panic. He is not intimidated by rumors, nor does He scramble to clear your name when men begin to speak falsely of you. Instead, God waits, and in that waiting, He watches. He listens to every false accusation, every whisper that stains your name, every sentence built upon jealousy and pride. And just when the noise of those lies grows loud enough to drown out all earthly defense, then and only then does He unveil His truth in a way that cannot be denied. This may seem unfair at first. Why would a good and just God allow the lies to gain momentum? Why would he not interrupt the falsehood before it spreads like wildfire? The answer is found in the nature of divine justice. God does not act merely to prove a point. He acts to display his glory. If he silenced the lie too soon, the truth would not carry the weight of wonder. But when he lets the lie climb to its highest height, when he lets the false witnesses gather in confidence and declare things with boldness, and then he strikes with the force of truth, the fall is spectacular, not for revenge, but for revelation. Consider the story of Daniel. They plotted in secret, they twisted laws, they played politics, and all the while Daniel said nothing. He did not beg for sympathy or defend himself to the king. He was thrown into the lion's den, not because he was guilty, but because God had a plan that was greater than human fairness. And what did God do? He waited. He allowed the lie to reach its loudest volume, to the point where Daniel's death was considered inevitable. And then, in the silence of that cave, truth roared. The mouths of lions were shut, but more importantly, the mouths of liars were silenced. God operates this way not to delay justice, but to amplify its impact. When the lies are loudest, people are most convinced of your guilt. And when God moves at that very moment, he transforms your vindication into a divine spectacle. Those who believe the lies are left speechless. Those who spoke them are left ashamed. Those who doubted your heart are forced to reckon with the evidence of your endurance and God's unmistakable favor. So, if the lies feel louder than ever right now, don't despair. Don't rush to explain. Don't water your soul trying to convince the world. Stand still, because God is allowing the volume of falsehood to rise for one purpose only, to reveal his truth so clearly, so dramatically, and so undeniably that no one will be able to question his hand in your story. You won't need to shout. You won't even need to speak. The miracle he performs will say everything for you. And when heaven finally speaks, it will not only break the silence, it will break the lie. There is a sacred power in silence, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of trust. When you choose not to respond to slander, when you refuse to lower yourself into the mud of argument, when you hold your peace while others distort your truth, you are not being weak. You are setting the stage for heaven's intervention. Your silence is not empty. It is filled with a faith that says, I don't need to prove myself. My God will speak for me. In a world where everyone is eager to defend themselves, silence has become a foreign language. But in the language of heaven, silence is sacred. It is the echo of strength that does not come from self-righteousness, but from surrender. When Jesus stood before Pilate, falsely accused and slandered by men who had already made up their minds, he did not argue, he did not plead, he did not scream for justice. He stood in majestic silence, knowing that truth has no need to wrestle with noise. The cross was not the end, it was the stage, and the resurrection was the miracle that silenced every lie spoken over him. When you are silent in your suffering, you are following the footsteps of the righteous. You are choosing dignity over drama, faith over fury, and though the world may see your silence as weakness, heaven sees it as a stage being prepared. You see, God does not perform his miracles in the middle of chaos. He waits for the calm, created not by circumstance, but by your choice to trust him. And when the world thinks the silence means you're done, that you've surrendered, that you've lost, that's when God writes his loudest testimony. Your silence is not passive, it is prophetic. It is the declaration that you believe in a God who vindicates, a God who restores, a God who lifts up those who were once trampled by the feet of mockery, And when God moves, He doesn't just vindicate you privately. He does it so publicly, so clearly, that even those who doubted you have to admit, this was God. Your silent tears have been seen. Your quiet prayers have been heard. Your refusal to retaliate has been noted in the courts of heaven. And the miracle is already being prepared. Think of Hannah, ridiculed for her barrenness. The priest misjudged her. Her rival tormented her, yet she said nothing to defend her pain. She prayed, she trusted, and in due time God gave her not only a child but a prophet. Samuel wasn't just an answer, he was a miracle that silenced every voice that mocked her. Your miracle will do the same. It will not only bless you, it will silence those who used your pain as proof that God had forgotten you. So if you've chosen silence in the face of lies, rejoice. You're not surrendering. You're preparing the spotlight for God's power. And when the curtain rises, your miracle will speak volumes, louder than any word you ever could have said. When the enemy speaks, he often does so with noise. Accusation, distortion, confusion. The devil has always used words to manipulate perception. From the Garden of Eden to the wilderness where Jesus was tempted, accusation has been his weapon of choice. But notice something deeply profound. God never engages him in long debate. Heaven's method of warfare isn't rooted in arguments, it's rooted in action. There is a reason the heavens remain calm while the earth rages with gossip. While people scramble to be heard, to justify, to clear their names, the Almighty remains still, unmoved by the drama. Why? Because God knows that truth doesn't need to shout to be known. When it's time to answer, He doesn't send explanations, He sends results. His response is not in the form of a rebuttal, it's in the form of a miracle so undeniable, it shuts every lying mouth without uttering a single word. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were falsely accused and thrown into the furnace for their faith, they didn't plead with the king. They didn't gather evidence to prove their integrity. They simply stood in quiet defiance of a lie. The furnace was stoked, the flames roared, and from the outside it looked like the end. But what did God do? He didn't argue with Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't send an angel to debate. He entered the fire himself. His presence became the answer. The miracle of protection became louder than any accusation spoken over them. Therefore, don't gnash the serpents. Once taught, Jujaro said, the millions of people who call themselves Nia, I, Ain. In our lives, the same divine strategy unfolds. When your name is smeared, when your reputation is twisted, you might feel compelled to respond. You might want to prove the truth. But heaven doesn't always operate that way. God often waits for the moment when your voice goes quiet, when your hands are clean and your heart is still, and that's when He moves. And when He moves, He doesn't need an audience's approval. His action rewrites the narrative in one breath. The book of Psalms reminds us in chapter 37, verse 6, He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Light doesn't argue with darkness, it just appears, and darkness flees. When God is ready to respond to the lies spoken about you, He will not call a trial. He will drop a testimony that no tongue can contest. And the very people who believe the worst will witness the best. In this divine process, your role is not to collect proof, it is to cultivate faith. Your job is not to speak louder, it is to trust deeper. Because when God finally acts, His work becomes the proof. His miracle becomes the judgment. His blessing becomes the verdict. He does not answer slander with stories. He answers it with silence, breaking signs. What they said about you won't matter anymore. What God does through you will become the only thing they can see. And in that sacred moment, no one will ask for your version of the story. They won't need it. The result of God's hand will say more than your defense ever could. There's a mysterious beauty in how God takes what was meant to harm you and transforms it into the very testimony that uplifts you. The world is skilled at twisting stories. They can take your pain and frame it as weakness. They can take your absence and call it abandonment. They can take your silence and label it guilt. But the same hands that form a lie cannot touch what God has destined to be revealed. When people manipulate your story, it may look like they've won, but God has a tendency to use those twisted narratives as the raw material for miracles. They wanted to bury your name in disgrace. They wanted others to see you through the lens of their deception. But what they didn't realize is that every twist, every exaggeration, every distortion they crafted was preparing the stage for a divine reversal. And when God begins to move, He doesn't just clear your name. He makes your life a walking contradiction to every false word spoken over you. Look at the life of Joseph. His brothers twisted the story to their father, claiming he was dead. They dipped his coat in blood, presented it as evidence, and let a lie destroy a father's heart. Yet years later, the same Joseph, sold, betrayed, and forgotten, became the very man God raised to feed nations. The same ones who distorted his story bowed before the reality of his testimony. They couldn't deny it. They didn't need an explanation. His existence was the evidence. That's what God is preparing for you. The story that was twisted to damage your reputation will become the story that magnifies His glory. Every word used to discredit you will lose its power when your fruit begins to bloom. Every false witness will fall silent in the face of undeniable favor. You won't have to remind them what they said. Your results will do that without speaking. You see, the reason God sometimes allows false narratives to spread is because He plans to outshine them, not just correct them. If He intervened too soon, the impact of your testimony wouldn't carry the weight of redemption. But when He waits, when He lets the false version of your story gain traction, He is preparing a miracle so radiant it will make the truth undeniable, not just to your enemies, but to those who stood on the sidelines and believed the worst. There will come a day when those who repeated lies about you will be left speechless by the beauty of your harvest. Your success won't just inspire, it will convict. Your peace will trouble those who hope to see you broken. Your joy will expose the hollowness of their deceit, and the twisted story they once told will become the backdrop for a testimony they can't erase. Because when God rewrites your story, He doesn't use ink, He uses evidence. He writes with transformed lives, restored hearts, and undeniable results. And no matter how hard they try, they won't be able to edit what heaven has already made public. There's something profoundly humbling about being mocked for a dream. When others hear your prayers and silently scoff, when they see your struggles and declare that you'll never rise, when they laugh behind closed doors at the thought of your breakthrough, they are not merely doubting your ability, they are underestimating God's faithfulness. But what they don't realize is that God loves to work in the very places they swore He wouldn't. He finds glory in manifesting miracles in the spaces they declared barren. When they said you'd never make it, they spoke from their limited understanding. They saw your weakness, your lack of resources, your delays, and concluded that you were finished. They were wrong, not because of you, but because they left God out of the equation. What they forgot is that every never declared over you is an invitation for God to say, now. Every door they said you'd never walk through, every level they said you'd never reach, every joy they said you'd never taste, those very places are being prepared for your vindication. Abraham and Sarah were told by nature, by biology, by age, that it would never happen. A child? In their old age? Impossible. But God waited until the word never was firmly etched into every observer's mind. And then, when all logic had expired, when the world had no expectation left, he delivered the very promise they thought was long dead. Isaac was not just a child. He was a public contradiction to every doubt, a living miracle that silenced every mocker. Your story is no different. The people who once mocked you will have no choice but to witness the very thing they denied unfold before their eyes. They will see you walk in freedom where they said you'd always be bound. They will watch you rise in joy where they said you'd never recover. They will witness you flourish in purpose where they once labeled you a failure, and they won't have words for it, only silence. God has a way of turning the ridicule of others into the runway for His glory. He uses their mockery as background noise to amplify His miracle. When they said, "It will never happen," He heard, "Make it undeniable," and He will answer accordingly, not out of spite, but out of covenant, because He honors the tears you cried in secret. He remembers the faith you held when no one else believed. He blesses the perseverance you showed when the world called you foolish for still hoping. Vindication doesn't always come in the form of apology. Sometimes it comes as undeniable fruit. The child you prayed for, the healing you believed in, the opportunity you sowed into, the peace you fought for in the storm. And when those miracles begin to bloom, they will do more than restore you. They will shut the mouths that once doubted your destiny. Your very existence will challenge everything they thought they knew about who God is and what He can do. So if they've said it'll never happen, rejoice, because in heaven's language, never is the perfect setup for watch this. The moment is near when your vindication will walk in, dressed as the very promise they said was out of reach. And when it does, the miracle will not only lift you, it will silence everything ever spoken against you. Some wounds never get spoken aloud. Some betrayals cut too deep for explanation. There are moments when you've had to smile while bleeding inside, when you've given love and received silence, when you've poured out loyalty only to be discarded. And in those silent sufferings, your heart has whispered to heaven, "Lord, do you see this?" Let me assure you, He does. And while the world moved on, while people overlooked your pain, while no one apologized or noticed the way your soul limped, God was taking notes. What the world overlooks, heaven records. What they brushed off as weakness, God cherished as worship. He saw you hold your tongue when you were falsely accused. He saw you bless others while you were broken. He saw the nights you cried yourself to sleep, whispering, "God, please make it right." And in response, He began preparing something sacred, a public blessing born from private agony. There is a holy pattern in Scripture. When God wants to heal a deep internal wound, He often brings a blessing so visible, so tangible, that it rewrites the narrative others placed upon you. Think of Job. His suffering was private at first, then public and humiliating. Friends sat in silence, then spoke cruelly. They accused him, assumed he'd brought his troubles on himself. But God wasn't absent. He was preparing a double portion, and when it arrived, it didn't just restore Job's fortune, it healed his name, his dignity, and his heart. The blessing God is about to pour into your life will do the same. It will come with such clarity, such undeniable grace, that it will reach into places only your pain once lived. This isn't about revenge, it's about restoration, and God is intentional in how He restores. He knows exactly where you were wounded. He knows who ignored your pain. He knows how long you waited for a word, a gesture, a sign. And so, when He blesses you, it will be in full view. Not for your pride, but for your healing. You will not have to explain your struggle. The outcome will speak for itself. They won't need to hear the stories, they will see the favor. You won't need to revisit the betrayal. The joy on your face will testify. God is not just in the business of making things right. He's in the business of making things beautiful. And when He does it publicly, He is not just elevating your life. He is answering your pain with purpose. Your public miracle is heaven's way of declaring, I saw what they missed. I counted the tears they ignored. I heard the prayers they mocked. I am healing you in the open, so the world will know what I did in the secret. So don't be surprised when the spotlight suddenly shifts in your direction. Don't feel guilty when God begins to elevate you in places where you were once humiliated. That moment is not about attention, it's about healing. It's about a father who refused to let his child bleed forever. It's about divine love, refusing to let your private wounds go unanswered. There are voices that live not only in the air around you, but in the memory of what they said. Voices that spoke with authority, convincing others you were a fraud. Voices that masked envy with judgment and turned your purity into suspicion. Voices that twisted your story, labeled your name, and poured dirt on a future they couldn't see. And for a long time, it felt like those voices had the final word. But God never gave them that authority. He was simply allowing them to speak long enough for their words to be drowned by what He was preparing behind the scenes. You see, God doesn't answer the lies with explanations. He answers them with evidence. And when the time comes, the miracle He performs in your life will not just be a breakthrough, it will be a broadcast. He won't just bless you behind the curtain, He will do it center stage, in the open, where every voice that rose to condemn you will now sit in silence, unable to refute what God has done. The book of Exodus gives us a powerful example. When Pharaoh refused to listen to Moses, God didn't argue with him, He moved. When Pharaoh's magicians tried to mimic God's power, God didn't engage in a shouting match. He simply made His miracles undeniable. Each plague, each wonder, each act of divine intervention was louder than 1,000 declarations. And when the Red Sea split, no one was asking for Moses to explain anymore. The miracle had done the talking. Likewise, in your life, the sea is about to part. And when it does, the sound of that miracle will overpower every lie spoken in your absence. The people who once questioned your calling will witness your anointing. Those who doubted your endurance will see your elevation. Those who tried to bury you in gossip will find their words buried in silence. What's extraordinary is that God doesn't just clear the record, He creates a new one. When His hand moves, it doesn't merely justify your past, it redefines your identity. The miracle He performs is not just a rescue, it's a revelation of who you are in Him, a revelation of what He always intended for your life. And in that moment, the voices won't matter anymore, not because they were never real, but because they will be completely overpowered by the clarity of God's favor. This is the great reversal. The louder the accusations, the more thunderous the miracle. The more they bury you, the higher God will raise you. And when He raises you, not even the strongest lie can stand against the truth He reveals. His miracle will speak of your innocence, your endurance, your obedience, and above all, His glory. So stay ready, because when He moves, it won't be subtle. When He blesses you, it won't be hidden. And when His miracle drops, the volume of His voice will silence every whisper, every rumor, and every judgment that ever rose against you. My friend, do not be discouraged by the noise that surrounds you. Do not lose heart over the lies that seem to echo louder than your truth, because the God you serve is not intimidated by noise. He is the composer of silence. And in His silence He crafts wonders. He allows the world to speak not because he's absent, but because he is preparing to answer with a voice they cannot ignore. You were never alone in your pain. You were never forgotten in your tears. You were never abandoned in the face of slander. Heaven was watching. Angels were recording. And your Father in heaven, slow to anger, but swift to justice, was already preparing a miracle that would silence every accusation against you. Come and listen now, and behold, that miracle is coming, and when it comes, you won't have to explain yourself anymore. You won't need to remind people of your integrity. You won't need to fight for your name. The favor on your life will speak volumes. The breakthrough in your story will drown out the mockery in theirs. The restoration of your path will expose the falseness of their words. And in that sacred moment, the lie will die, not with a scream, but with silence. A holy silence born from truth standing tall, favor shining bright, and God himself whispering, "This is my child, and I have spoken." So stand still, trust deeply. The miracle is near, and when it drops, it will not only lift you, it will silence every lie,